All right, guys, I'm actually going to make a Star Wars video today. I know I'm not making as many of those as I have before in the past. And it's really because Star Wars is just not in a good place. And also there's not a lot of news on Star Wars right now. But I did want to bring up a topic here that Ahmed, who played Jar Binks in the Star Wars prequels and in the Clone Wars, he actually may be onto something with a statement he made about Disney Star Wars. And we all know how I feel about Disney Star Wars. Is for the most part is absolute garbage. There's elements that I like The Mandalorian and Rogue One. That's really about it. Oh, I did like Star Wars Rebels. But mainly when it comes to the movies, there's a lot of problems with those movies. And Ahmed kind of brought up something, a reason as to why Disney Star Wars is not that good. Or should I say it's not really George's vision. Now, we know 100% certain that these movies are not George Lucas's vision because George Lucas gave them outlines for 7, 8, 9. The greatest storyteller of all time gave them an outline for 7, 8, 9. And they decided to throw it out into the trash, never listened to George Lucas, even though JJ said that they met with George. But it's clear based on the trash that was given to us in The Rise of Palpatine that they didn't listen to anything that George said. It's 100% clear. That movie had nothing to do with George's vision whatsoever. Once again, we get Luke resonated to just one total scene, about 5 minutes of screen time. Once again, he's been disrespected. But to get back to what Ahmed said about Disney Star Wars, he had a pretty lengthy comment on it, and I'm going to read it. I somewhat agree with him to a certain extent. Okay, so I'm going to read it right here. He says, Star Wars has since skewed older, and there isn't very much for the kids anymore in Star Wars. It's very much for the millennials and Gen Xers like myself. So kids are kind of left out of these. And the kids have to go to the animated series in order to get their dose of Star Wars. Or they do like Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace is very much a kid's movie. I completely agree with that. The new iterations of Star Wars are not really skewed towards kids, which is not something that George ever really wanted to do. George was always about the kids. And he used to say that if you get the kids, you have fans for the next 20 years. He was very much about kids. This idea that the movies are for adults is a very new thing, to be honest. Now, he's right about that. The movies being for adults, that was never George's plan. And we know that 100% for certain because when the OT was out there, he was always saying these movies were made for 12-year-old boys. Now, if he actually said that today, in today's age, he would be accused of being a sexist. But we know how that goes. But when he made Star Wars, it was a family soap opera. That's what he said. It was about fathers and sons. And the target market for his movies were 12-year-old boys. And he was right about that. But Star Wars, when it came out in 1977, was bigger than George Lucas could ever imagine. It resonated not just with little boys, it resonated with everyone. Everyone loved Star Wars. They did. But George never got away from the kids element. He only made themes that were really kind of geared towards kids. Now, sometimes it was more mature themes, but for the most part, you can tell by the Phantom Menace, the target market was still the kids. No doubt about it. Now, when you watch Revenge of the Sith, the darkest of the Star Wars movies, that definitely was geared towards more older kids. But I guess you can kind of say that it was a coming-of-age movie for a more mature kid. I mean, there was some dark elements in there. I mean, Anakin was killing younglings, even though they technically did not show that. Anakin choked out his wife. It was brutal. There was a lot of killing in it. It was the darkest Star Wars movie ever. But when we jump over to now, the Disney Star Wars movies, it's different. And when I walked out of the Force Awakens, I was like, this doesn't even really feel like Star Wars to me. I know there's people out there that like that movie, but I saw right through that movie. That's where the problem started. It wasn't Star Wars. I mean, it was more geared towards social justice. You probably didn't notice it in that movie, but when The Last Jedi came out, it was geared towards social justice instead of, kids and family and everything like that. The family element to me really disappeared when it came to Star Wars in the sequel trilogy. It wasn't about family. Now, in the OT, it was definitely about family. It's about Vader and Luke, father and son. And then the prequels, you actually get to see the struggle of Anakin, the father of Luke, and his relationship with Padme, his relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi, the birth of the kids, A New Hope. It was about that. But when you watch these new movies, they're so discombobulated that it's clearly not a family movie anymore. If you watch these movies, clearly the Rise of Palpatine, in a way, is a little bit too confusing to me for kids. I mean, it was confusing for me, and I'm an adult. The first 45 minutes of that movie was just all over the place. And it's clear they alienated George's vision. They just did. Now, he made a point here in his statement here that they have to go to like animated series and stuff like that to get their Star Wars fits if you're a kid. Now, don't get me wrong, the Clone Wars can get pretty dark too, but for the most part, it was kid friendly. I loved it. I really, really did. And Disney, now they're making these kid friendly things like, what is it called? Star Wars Forces of Destiny or Galaxy of Adventures. And it basically just shows you kind of like the OT animated shorts. And I did videos on this before, but it's so disrespectful to Luke. That's the problem with those animated shorts. They made Luke look like Jake from The Last Jedi. It looked like he was so scared and he just wanted to quit and everything like that. They made Leia look like she was a maniac in some of those scenes because, we have to empower women and we have to make the men look weak. And that was never George's vision. George pretty much treated men and women the same. The male characters were strong. The female characters were strong in Leia and Padme Amidala. But now Disney, they've done the reverse. They've actually taken it to where the men are weak and the women have to be strong. In The Last Jedi, they tried to give all these women all these roles and everything, and like Holdo and Rose Tico. And they're two of the worst characters in Star Wars to me, along with Rey. I'm not a fan of Rey. Rey never had to pay her dues. What was Rey? Rey, what was her role? She was nothing. She was a goody two-shoes. She was a Mary Sue. Everything was given to her and everything was taken by her. And she ended up with everything in the end. Basically, she ended up with the Falcon for the most part. She ended up taking a Skywalker name. Palpatine wins. What was the point of the sequel trilogy? There is no point. So I don't believe that those movies are going to actually, change in the next 20 years. I mean, they're just going to be garbage. I don't think those movies are going to grow over time with people. But I do believe to a certain extent that Ahmed Best is onto something. Disney was more concerned about social justice than making films for kids. And George, no matter what, George loves the Phantom Menace. He loves that movie. And you can actually see he never deviated from it being a kids movie. And it at 100% absolutely was for kids. And then you get to Attack of the Clones, that's a little bit more mature, not as much as Revenge of the Sith. But I think each movie was supposed to take a step up. And you have a little kid, and each year he gets a little bit more mature, and then you can handle a little bit more when it comes to something like Revenge of the Sith. So Disney, they absolutely missed the whole entire point of what Star Wars is. And I guess that should have been expected when they threw away George's scripts or his story treatments anyway for 7, 8, 9. Absolutely. But you know that Disney has too much pride to say that they did anything wrong. And to them, they're not doing anything wrong because now we're getting more social justice in the High Republic. I don't think that's going to be really geared towards kids either. It's just not. Let's face it, Disney is not good storytellers when it comes to Star Wars. George was a great storyteller. And if Disney could just swallow their pride, bring George in, listen to his ideas. But maybe at this point, George doesn't want to be involved with Disney whatsoever because they pretty much disrespected him in so many ways. They thought that he wasn't that good anymore, and probably they never respected him at all. They just respected that this is a huge brand and we can make money on it. But if you look at the box office, the profits were declining. The toys, nobody's buying toys. So this new movie that's going to be coming out in 2022, I believe, whatever it's going to be, I don't care to see it. I'm probably not even going to see the movie because to me, Star Wars is dead. Disney 100% missed the mark. And what really gets me is they disrespected the legacy of George Lucas. And Ahmed Best was onto something about that, even though he didn't directly say that. But we all know they disrespected the legacy of George Lucas. They're going to have to do a lot of work to get the fans back. But I think Disney is in such a mindset, especially the people at Lucasfilm. They're more into social justice than storytelling. That's what needs to change. But it's pretty clear they're not going to change anything. This is what Star Wars is now. Star Wars is Disney Star Wars. It's not George Lucas Star Wars. And Star Wars is just going into the gutter. It's over. It's dead. There's nothing that can be done unless Disney swallows their pride, goes back to the drawing board. But we know that's not going to happen. Look at all this stuff they actually have planned. And even the stuff they have planned are having all kind of production problems. Obi-Wan Kenobi still having production problems. I don't know what's going to happen with the High Republic that nobody seems interested in at all. Nobody cares about this stuff. And of course, it's all about social justice once again. But that's just my thoughts on this. What do you guys think of this? Ahmed Best, is he on to something about Star Wars being for kids, but yet Disney really hasn't delivered on the kid part? They have alienated kids, and so they probably won't have a future. And George was right. If you can get the kids, you can have them for the next 20 years or so. In this case, 40 years, because I'm a 42-year-old man and I grew up with the OT. I'm still a Star Wars fan. I'm more of a George Lucas Star Wars fan than a Disney Star Wars fan. So guys, let me know what you think about all this in the comments. If you're new here to the channel, please hit subscribe to catch future videos from me, and we will catch you on the next video. John Matrixx, out.